like that's kind of been what I've been hearing from y'all. There's people stuck in your funnel. Like you've got good conversations going, but it's hard to get them. It's hard to like know when or how to ask for the close. So I kind of wanted to just like go over things that I've been doing and like ways that I've learned you can like kind of get to them to the point to ask for the close. But first, I wanted to say like I hate the term closing because then it feels like salesy, but really it's just like they've reached the point where they know all the information they need to know to decide if this is for them or not. And I think too, like remembering two really big things, just always, but in general, like I feel like the more conversations you have, you almost get numb to the fact that it's people's health that we're dealing with, and they're just like conversations. And so just remembering like ultimately like what is truly in it for them. Is it, are we talking about the business or are we talking about the products? Because like we know that it can be the answer to so many things and we truly believe that, but answering all of their questions and getting them to the point where they can say, okay, yes, like I see what's in it for me and like this is how I'm going to make my decision. So less is more in conversations, which I mean I feel like we talk about that all the time, but like if we're going to do more of, we need to do more asking questions. And I thought about making just like a document just full of questions to ask, because I feel like that's something that like we can get, once we start getting people talking, we can kind of get to like the root of some objections. And ultimately the reason why people don't go ahead and like jump in is because there are objections that we haven't really like surfaced. And so basically figuring out how to get to that point. And so Macy was going to kind of go over, like, she wrote out some questions. She's like, I'm going to write out some questions and like times whenever you could potentially ask for the close. Cause it's kind of like you do this, like almost like this song and dance. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now what? Like, do you want to sign up? Like, do you not want to sign up? Like, what are you thinking? And so kind of just helping that last part flow naturally. So Macy, just go ahead if you want to.
Okay, so I feel like this is the number one question that like we get from y'all and like ourselves from people who we're talking to. Like, how many times have you heard, well, it sounds really great, but I just don't think I have the money for it right now. So Kayla, what is a good response to that?
Okay, so first I'm gonna go with like product people and just assume they're product, because ultimately like if they're talking about for a business and they see this and this is too much money for a business, then number one, they need the business something horribly. And number two, I mean, I just feel like that's a whole different conversation. So I feel like we get that more with product anyway. So there are the group of people that genuinely can't afford it, but we won't know who that is until we ask a few more questions. So I feel like the cost objection is one that basically any objection is just an open door for more conversation. Like once we find out what their real objection is, then we're really starting to get to the root and starting to like really have good conversations with people. Because I feel like sometimes people will say, oh, I just can't afford it. And they think that you're going to say, oh, okay, no worries. And like kind of go away. So something you could say is, okay, so what would it be valuable to, like, what would make it valuable to you? What of something for your health could you see investing? And just like kind of asking them that like question. It feels forward, but if we ask them that, they could say, well, honestly, like if it was da 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 da, then maybe then we can start to figure out, okay, well then, you know, you would be better suited for this, or you probably would be better suited with your budget for just slim. Like, let's just make you a preferred customer. Because I feel like in the beginning, we haven't really been getting people plugged into the products, period. Like, yes, ultimately we want them to be on a system and an ambassador because they're going to see the best results when they're on a full system. But even still, if we can introduce just like one product or two products as a customer, then that will help. And then, so then if they're like, well, I mean, it might be worth the money, I just don't really know yet, then we can tell them to purchase a trial. And I would have them purchase a 7-day trial of Slim, but drink 2 a day. Because they need to try something that they're going to feel like they're going to, you know, at least have something. I feel like if they just purchase a 3-day trial, they're not going to see anything. But being on Slim, 2 Slim a day for 3 days, they might see a little like boost in energy. They might be feeling better. They'll love the taste of it. So kind of getting them around to that point. I feel like we tend to, I personally do this too, whenever somebody says, oh, I can't afford it, I like way back off instead of just like kind of humbly asking more questions. And I feel like that will kind of help get that person to a point where you can then ask for some sort of like sale, either being like, okay, well, do you want to go ahead and try the trial? And I mean, something that I always divert to is they have a 60-day money back guarantee, and they have that for a reason, because like our products are plant-based, so they're not going to see even a glimpse of their results if they're not on a full system. So
okay, so this is somebody who you followed up with about, so we say like follow up about a new product, a sale, whatever it may be. This time you followed up and you said, hey, Jessica, I wanted to let you know we're offering a $20 reimbursement for our systems. The system is perfect for your goals that we talked about. Plus, people are having incredible results with MetaBurn. What do you think? She responds, thanks, I'll think about it. Where do you go from there?
Okay, so that one, what I'll think about it is like a really hard one, but I feel like, again, like I feel like all these questions feel kind of like not forceful, but like ultimately we're trying to help them get to the point where they can decide if this is for them. And sometimes like I'm curious, I've almost been curious to say, well, what do you got to think about? Like, so instead of saying that, I think a good thing that we could say is, okay, so what about this makes you a little hesitant? I feel like you might be a little hesitant. Like, can I answer some questions for you? And like, just that puts it back into the point of, okay, so they are hesitant. Number one, they're not just either they're hesitant or they don't want to do it and they don't want to say no. And so if they're like, well, I'm not really sure, then I'll even come out and be like, listen, if this doesn't seem like something that would like benefit you for X, and X is their potential Y, we've basically asked all these questions. We know what their why is. And so you can say, if this doesn't seem like something that's going to benefit X, then don't be afraid to tell me no. I understand it's not for everybody. And even kind of giving them the freedom to say no, like, I feel like lets people be like, well, okay, it's not that I don't want to do it. I just blank. And there you have your true objection. And so giving people that like a little bit of freedom, I feel like they'll even be able to be like, okay, yeah, like this is where I'm at. I'm just going to be honest. Because they feel like since they have that door open that they can, say no if they want, they might open up and be vulnerable because they don't feel like you're going to push.
Okay, so say you're in the middle of a conversation with someone, you've talked about their health goals, and you've told them like what these products can do for them and why. And then they just totally fall off, whether it's after like a product information message or you're continuing to talk about their goals, they just totally ignore you. And it's been 2 days at this point. What's a good follow-up that's not like uncomfortable being like, hey, you there?
So that one, probably with that person, you've not gotten to their why. Like they've probably honestly blown you off a little bit with just from like I've seen conversations like that before. And I feel like you can't even get them to start talking. So at that point, you could even say something similar to what we said in the previous one, being like, hey, you might be super busy. This might not be the right time for you. And that's totally fine. I want to send you this fill in the blank that reminds me of you. If you have time to get back to me, that's great. If not, I'll follow up sometime later, or I'll get back with you later. And just like letting them know, like, still, you're going to get back with them, but I would put them kind of like on a different list because ultimately it's not something that they're interested in right now. And then another thing you could say to them, if you've been having somewhat of a good conversation, but then all of a sudden they're just gone, like you've talked about maybe what's in it for them, what could be a reason why they need these products, but they've just kind of like disappeared. Something that I've recently started saying is apologizing for taking so long to get back to them. I'll just be like, hey, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you over the weekend. It was crazy. I hope you guys had a good weekend. I saw you went to the football game. Was that fun? And then like I'll hit enter and be like, okay, so, and then like I just pick up where we left off. And like, even though it's like, you don't have to apologize, I didn't respond to you. It kind of keeps putting us back in the position of guiding the conversation. And then I feel like whenever we're trying to get someone to the point of like, saying, yes, they're going to jump in or no, they're not, we have to be the ones guiding the conversation, because if it's up to them, they won't know how to like get to that point, and they won't know like at what point are they ready? You know what I mean? Because they don't know what all the steps are. So it's our job to really like guide all of that. Was there another question you had, Mace?
Just basic questions. So like how many times do you follow up? And with these 199 welcome packs, I feel like they're such a better value. So what do you think, like, how do we explain the best benefits of the 199 pack as opposed to just the 99 pack?
So what I've been doing with people is honestly, like, since really before even the new Fresh Start came out, I've started just recommending that, because I feel like even before there, I mean, yes, the 99 welcome packs are great, but there was always be like an extra product that we would need to add on. And this value is just so much better. So what I've been doing is recommending that. And then also knowing that, like, yes, they might not be able to afford it, and then just saying, if that's out of your budget, we can totally start you smaller. Just know the more products you add in, the better results you're going to have, and that's just the most products at the best value. That's why I started with that. And that way they're kind of like, oh, okay, like, yeah, well, and it's all mindset to me, because before we would still have the people when we would recommend the 99 that would say, oh, that's too much, and now if you start with the 199, and I mean, sometimes people will look at those graphics and see that it's retail valued for like 310, 330, and they're like, wow, that's such a good value. 199 is awesome. And right now they're 179. So, but even if they're like, that's kind of out of my budget, and then we can go take a step down, and they can still be on a full system and still see the results there without having to feel like, they can't benefit from it. But I would also just be sure at that point we add, like, in the conversation, just say something like, yes, we can totally start you on the smaller system, but just know you're going to see the best results the more products that you increase in your regimen. And I think that just lets them know, like, so it leaves the door open for, if number one, they're not happy with the results they're seeing on the 99 welcome pack, we've kind of already, like, set the kind of ground rules for, like, you're going to see better results the more you're on. We've also left that door open for, if they have too much BioCleanse, we can be like, hey, this would be a really good time to go ahead and add in something else. That way they still stay over 100 PV.
Okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
And what do you feel like is a good number of conversations to be having per week? So I feel like it's easy to fall into the rut of, I'm going to send 5 conversations or 5 first contact messages today, or whatever your goal may be. But I feel like we sometimes lose track of how many, like, actual conversations we should be having with people through the week. So what do you feel like is a good number for that?
I think, like, the number that just popped into my head, I would shoot for 3 new conversations a day. Like, not messages, like 3 actual conversations. And I mean, I feel like we kind of go back and forth in, like, IPA, like, do you shoot for, like, a message number, or do you shoot for a conversation number? But ultimately, I know some of you guys were on Tara Castaneda's Zoom, but when she said that, if you're just sending a message and you get no response, that's just a flyer. Like that's just like if you're walking down the street and you see a flyer, there was no engagement, there's no relationship, there's no conversation there. You can't really count that as, like, a message, because it would just be like if they saw your post, you weren't engaged, you don't know anything about them. So I kind of think 3 was the number that popped into my head. So
okay, that's awesome. I hope this helped y'all. Kind of like it helped me, like, organize my thoughts on, closing up those final conversations where you're kind of like, okay, so is this for you? What are you thinking? And just helps you, like, really narrow down those ending conversations with people.
And even too, remembering, like, the biggest thing to me is, like, the touch points between each thing. Like, we know the things we need to be saying in the conversations and how we need to be guiding it. But I mean, as weird as it sounds, like, time is of the essence, because ultimately, like, you think about from your personal experience, like, I know there's been things that I've wanted in a store, and this isn't even things that are going to change my health or change the way I am as a mom or anything like that, and I end up not getting it. I walk out of the store, I typically don't go back. You know what I mean? Like, I'll live without it. I'll be fine. I've been without it this long. I'll be fine without it. And I feel like that's the same with us. So if, like, someone's interested in that, like, time period, that 24 to 48 hour time period afterwards, going ahead and getting them, like, started and getting them on the products is crucial.